This is Chase Krim from Texas Roadshow, and you're listening to the Sports Card Strategy Show, part of the NoOffSeason.com Sports Card Network, the #1 place for advice on how to make money flipping sports cards. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, there is no off-season.
What's up, everybody? This is Chris Kelsey from Nash Cards, and you are watching the Sports Card Strategy Show, where there is no off-season.
What's up, everybody? I'm Paul Hickey with NoOffSeason.com. This is the Sports Card Strategy Show. Don't forget to get a free 30-day trial at NoOffSeason.com today to help you make money flipping sports cards, build your sports card investment portfolio, get unlimited advice from our experts, and take sports card school to navigate the hobby. That's NoOffSeason.com. Get your free 30-day trial today. All the data we use on the Sports Card Strategy Show is from MarketMoversApp.com. Use code NOOFFSEason at MarketMoversApp.com to get 20% off for life after a free 14-day trial. All right, let's get to the Sports Card Strategy. Yes, NoOffSeason.com fam. Welcome to the Sports Card Strategy Show. I'm Paul Hickey with NoOffSeason.com, and I've got my main man, Connor Barnett, head of content at NoOffSeason.com. What's up, Connor? How you doing, man?
Fantastic. Ready for a fire episode. Love Wednesdays for this sole reason. We got a lot of exciting stuff to run through. We're going to have some, I don't want to say spirited debate, but some good talks about some potential options. So I'm excited to jump into things.
There could be an uproar in the YouTube comments. That's for sure. I'm looking forward to it. So stay tuned. But not only is tomorrow the NFL draft, but we're smack dab in the middle of the first round of the NBA playoffs, and it is super fun right now. It's a great time to be a sports fan. It's a great time to be a sports card flipper because we've got a lot of transactions happening, a lot of opportunities. Our sole job is to help all of you in the NoOffSeason.com fam find the best opportunities to make money flipping sports cards. So today, what could spark the spirited debate is the NFL backup QB strategy. It's something that I am super pumped about, have been really excited about for a long time. And Connor has been in the lab, folks, and just wait till you see what he has prepared for us in terms of the theme of our top 5 sports cards to buy, graded, and flip. So we're going to get in all of that. But first, of course, we're going to run through our live chat love. Apparently, word on the street is that Waney Juice has been here in the live chat waiting for 16 hours before the show starts, just staring at youtube.com/Paul Hickey, not able to wait, not able to contain themselves. Waney Juice, we love you. New name in the live chat. Gotta love new names. We love new members of the NoOffSeason.com fam, and we love the old school, the OGs. Sean, Red 5 Cards. Good morning to you. You're one of the OGs, Sean. We love you. Good to see you in the live chat. And I would say one of the, third or fourth year stars, kind of like Anthony Edwards, is Koa Carrero, is like our Ant-Man of the show in the live chat. What's up, Koa? Good to see you. You've been here for a while, but you're a rising star in the fam. You're not quite like Greeny Green, who's kind of like the LeBron of the NoOffSeason.com live chat here on YouTube, but you're like Ant-Man, who's like the next LeBron. Yeah, I said it. The next LeBron. Remember to drop your L's and dubs in the live chat if you're here with us. We stream live, everybody, just so that you don't, just for those of you who don't know, because most of you listen to us on the podcast apps, and our format is more of a long form podcast. So if you listen on Apple, Spotify, we love you, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to participate in the dialogue, there's a bunch of different ways to do it. You could go to youtube.com/Paul Hickey, find this video, drop a comment, like the video, subscribe to the channel. That helps us a ton. Or you could do our Discord. The link to the Discord is always live at sportscardstrategy.com. You can find the link to the Discord there. But for those of you who are in our live chat, you might be coming from Facebook. You might be coming from LinkedIn. You might be coming from youtube.com/Paul Hickey, Twitch, X, or Instagram. Although if you're watching on Instagram, StreamYard does not allow you in the live chat. So we apologize for that. But we We see you and we love you. So however you're getting our content, we love you. And, if you're in the live chat and you want a question answered, best thing to do is to drop a super chat and make that super chat donation and we'll answer your question. But what we really want you to do, however you're getting this content, is go to nooffseason.com/ask. Go to nooffseason.com/ask. Get a free 30-day trial if you don't have one already. And we're going to do a really, really, really phenomenal job doing our research and answering in depth on our premium pod on Fridays. So you'll get access to that by going to nooffseason.com/ask. So live chat love is going to happen at the end of the show. We're going to get back to you. But speaking of questions being asked and or answered, Connor, what's today's question of the day, man?
Question of the day is, what is your biggest no when it comes to flipping sports cards? Paul, like always, I like to ask questions that kind of cause positive discussion to occur in the community and help everyone learn from one another. So today's question is, what is your biggest no when it comes to sports cards? We want to know what the cardinal sin in your book is for flipping sports cards. Drop your comment at youtube.com/Paul Hickey on this video once it's no longer live and it has been posted, or on our pinned post on Instagram at Sports Card Strategy. That is Instagram at Sports Card Strategy. Paul, if you had to have a cardinal sin for flipping sports cards that you try to avoid at all costs, what are you rolling with?
Oh, there's so many. And this is such a good, it's an unintended plug for Sports Card School for sure. So check that out at nooffseason.com. But my biggest no would be thinking that there's a deal at a card show with a sticker price and a nice vendor, and you haven't checked the comps. That's my biggest no. My biggest no is pulling trigger on a card in person because the person in front of you is nice. You like them. You feel obligated. You want to help them out. And you look at their sticker price and maybe even come down on it a little bit. And you're like, oh yeah, that's a deal because they came down. Not necessarily, my friends. I've been burned many a time unintentionally. The person's not trying to burn me. I just burned myself. So I don't want you guys to do that. I'd say that's my biggest no. But yeah, definitely want to know what the audience thinks. So like Connor said, comment at youtube.com/Paul Hickey. We're going to throw the question of the day out on the video at youtube.com/Paul Hickey and on our pinned post on IG at Sports Card Strategy. So let's go over, Connor, to a question that I want to ask everybody as well. A lot of questions here to start the show. We had our question of the day, and now another question I have is, are your NFL draft listings up? Are they up, people? And I want to go through and just take a look. I like to do this, and I think that this is an exercise that should help everyone else out, because we talk a lot about like how to sell your sports cards. And that's a big part of how to make money is the selling part. The buying part is gotten a little bit trickier because, we want to make sure that you get the right price on the card, the right snipe price. So we've put a lot of work into that. But that's a little bit easier, right? Because there's a lot of cards to choose from. But when it comes to selling, it really is an art form, and it's all about what card do you have, how much money do you have into that card, and the timing of getting it listed, and the format of listing it, right? Is it an auction? When is the auction? What's happening on the calendar for the player? Is it a buy it now or best offer? So we've talked about the NFL draft for at least a year as a selling marker, specifically the 2024 NFL draft. For at least a year, possibly 18 months as a huge selling marker, and it's tomorrow. And I think what I've learned is that there's no one-size-fits-all answer here. This is a new era 5950, Connor. This is not a flex fit, if you're picking up my analogy there. So what you want to do is, before or as you're thinking of listing your card, and by the way, even though the NFL draft is a sell marker, depending on the card, depending on the player, depending on how much you are into the card for, this is not going to be your last chance to sell these guys. So you don't actually have to rush to eBay to list in an auction or list in a buy it now or best offer if you haven't already. So take a deep breath. Don't worry too much about it. If you've got one of these guys, stay with me here. So we're going to look at Caleb Williams, Drake May, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Malik Neighbors. To me, Those are the top 4 names in this draft from a sports card standpoint, mainly because they all have the right cards. They are all projected top 5 to top 10 picks, thus the right players. And the NFL draft is definitely the right time to consider moving on from these cards. So what we're going to do here is we're going to first look at just a general eBay search, Caleb Williams auto. And so the purpose of this exercise is to just see what Caleb Williams autos are listed right now and what formats are they listed in. And if you toggle over to auction, which I've done, I want to see what Caleb Williams auctions for autos are ending on draft day. And so this is going to show us listings ending within 2 days. So there's some of these are ending today. And the reason I want to show this to you guys is because, in my opinion, I think it's a little risky to be ending auctions the day before the NFL draft. Now, again, it depends on the factors that I talked about earlier. It depends on how much into these cards are these people. And so you can see right here, I think you can learn a lot actually from just looking at listings, and then that you can use that to inform your selling strategy. So let's just talk about this. At the top, Caleb Williams 2023 Bowman Chrome Refractor out of $499 raw. This opening bid, Connor, is $400. That's pretty steep. 0 bids, 2 hours and 11 minutes left. So just kind of clock that, okay? Now, that's not his first Bowman, of course. Now we've got Bowman Chrome U Invicta auto out of 99. Caleb Williams SGC 95 auto 10. 11 bids. That's at 192.50, so not bad. 3 hours and 6 minutes left. We're going to stop here in a second, but I want to get down to a few more. You've got another Invicta out of 99 in PSA 9. Same card, but in PSA 9. 5 bids, 133.50, 3 hours left. I'm going to go through 3 or 4 more cards here. You've got an Inception auto orange out of 25 in BGS 9.5, $600 opening bid, 3 hours and 57 minutes left. Now you've got a massive card, but it's in PSA 9. This is his Bowman Chrome first from 2022, Lava Refractor out of 199. 19 bids. It's already at $340 with 4 hours and 21 minutes left. You've got a PSA 9 of the base auto from 2022, which is huge because it's his first. 4 hours left, 21 bids, $167.50. Now I'm going to scroll down a little bit and just kind of take a look at what else is out there. So it's mainly Bowman stuff for the auto, okay? So that's good. Now, what does this tell me? This tells me that sellers are looking at cards with flaws. These are not necessarily the right cards, right? So the Invicta autos out of 99, those we never would have suggested buying those cards in the first place. So we hope those sellers are just basically trying to move out of them. Maybe they ripped them. Maybe they won them in a break, got them graded, different things like that. Maybe they did buy them, but they bought them for significantly less than what they started the bid for or what they're actually at, what the bids are actually at. So then you see now, while the Lava Refractor is a huge card, it's in PSA 9. So, and the other huge card is the first base auto from 2022, but that's in PSA 9. So where am I going here, Connor? Where I'm going is it's the day before the draft. These auctions end today, and none of them are necessarily the right Caleb Williams cards. So I think what these sellers are doing, actually pretty smart on all of their parts, and I don't know any of them personally, they're basically just trying to rid themselves of decent cards, but not necessarily the bangers, before the market gets quote unquote flooded with the more desirable cards. Potentially. That's what I see here. And for the ones that have the really high opening bids, like the 2023 Bowman Raw Refractor out of 499 auto, that person likely is into that card for too much money. And they're just rolling the dice on, hey, look, if I get somebody to bite, then I make money or I'm out of it for a wash. If I don't get anyone to bite, I still have the card. So I think generally this is about what we tell people to do, what we try to tell people to do. And generally, I mean, you see there's 205 listings for Caleb Williams autos that end within the next 2 days. So people are listing their Caleb Williams cards. Now let's take a look at Drake May autos. So Drake May autos, you've got 858 results for Drake May autos. And these also end, they end, at the same point within the next 2 days. So same saved search. And you've got right at the top there, you've got the same situation happening that you did with Caleb. You've got a 2023 Bowman Chrome U refractor auto, Drake May out of 499, SGC 1010. $350 opening bid, which is a huge opening bid. No bids, ends in 16 minutes. Now, as you scroll down, you've got either a plethora of PSA 8s, PSA 9s of the right card, but again, limited market for the PSA 8s and the PSA 9s, or you've got PSA 10s of decent cards, but not the right cards. You've even got Drake May, like Wild Card and Leaf and all these other off brands of Drake May. So you really don't have any true bangers listed yet. So people appear to be liquidating their less desirable cards in advance of the draft, which I think makes sense because I think that you're going to see more and more desirable cards for these guys listed during the draft and post-draft. Here's the one exception. And again, you see this pattern. Drake May gold out of 50 lava, Bowman Chrome U first in PSA 10. Doesn't get much more of a banger than that. Opening bid, $769. So this person is protecting themselves, listing it before the draft, saying, look, if I can get somebody to bite before the draft on this banger, and maybe who knows what they're into it for? Maybe they're into it for $700. Maybe they're only into it for $200. Who knows? But what they're doing here, I think is smart, is they're trying to get somebody to bite on the pre-draft hype, but it's going to end before the draft so they can potentially relist it later depending on what happens with Drake May. And the pattern honestly continues with Marvin Harrison Jr. You've got his Super Glow card listed, one bid for $99. Props to that person. That's going to end on draft night. That's a great one. I mean, you do have some nice Marvin Harrison Jr. cards listed, but not many. Now, when you go over to Malik Neighbors, here's a banger at the top. I will say this. Now, this is one I actually thought about bidding on, believe it or not. If it was in the eBay vault, I might have done it. But a 2023 Bowman Chrome U Sapphire red out of 10 auto, a red out of 5 auto PSA 10. Don't know why you would end this today and not tomorrow, other than the fact that it's DC Sports 87, so it might be totally out of your control. So again, there you go. Like that's probably why. So as we look at NFL draft listing strategies, I think the overall theme here to me is that you want to dip your toe in the water with either a buy it now or best offer or super high opening bid, depending on what you're into the card for, depending on how much you have of a particular player. And you that could be also what some of these sellers are doing. Maybe they have a ton of a particular player, right? But I think you want to look at what's out there, right? Before you actually go list your card. Or you would have already listed your card knowing exactly what you're doing because you would have thought of these factors, or you would have been a one-on-one member of our one-on-one strategist package, because we go through all of this stuff with our one-on-one members. What's interesting here too, if you look, Connor, is I just want to expand it real quick and then hand it over to you for any questions or insights on any of this. Caleb Williams, just the name Caleb Williams searches, there's over 9,800 of them. So, when you expand it from Caleb Williams auto has 205, when you go to Caleb Williams, 9,800 plus. So just to give you an idea, if you were to compare that to like any number of searches for, like, say, Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Trevor Lawrence, Joe Burrow, Tua Tagovailoa, Jordan Love. This is not that. This is like 5% of the amount of searches, amount of results, amount of listings that you would have for any of those NFL quarterbacks. So what I think is interesting about this is that the market is not being flooded yet with these Caleb Williams cards, with these Drake May cards, with these Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors cards by any stretch of the imagination. There's not a whole ton of competition. So I think we're actually right on the money in terms of our general timing of this week to have things listed. Where I'm going with this, though, is I don't think ending things before the draft or on draft night necessarily maximizes your returns from something. And I think when you see the listings that are ending before the draft or on draft night, you're looking at people like really, really conservatively hedging their bets with either the very high opening bids on things or just the cards that aren't as desirable. Connor, what do you think about all this?
Yeah, I mean, this is interesting data. And obviously, you mentioned a couple times, we don't know what these people are in for these cards. We don't know everyone's position. Everyone has a unique position for the cards that they're selling, right? Depending on when they bought it, how much they paid for it, how much they're trying to get out of it, whatever it may be. But I'm not saying that it's my favorite strategy in the world, but I do think it's very interesting that a lot of people that have kind of these misfit cards, kind of not the right cards that we would necessarily recommend buying. I do think it's interesting that like those are the top auctions that you see on the search results for auctions that are ending before the draft. And something that I do like is and you kind of mentioned this, Paul, but you're essentially like removing competition from the top end cards by doing this. So while I don't love the idea of having an auction that ends before the sell marker or before the residuals that could happen from the sell marker, I do think it's very interesting for cards that aren't necessarily the right card, trying to get them moved to get cash flow back before they have the chance to really compete with these high-end cards on draft night and the days that ensue after draft night. So that's kind of my thoughts there. I'm curious to see how those auctions end up doing because I think for people that really want cash flow back and really are just trying to get cards moved, that might be a potential play so they're not competing with those super high-end cards.
Yeah, for sure. And I did something almost exactly like what you described. Like I had a few, I would say, misfit Caleb Williams cards that I picked up at some shows and stuff. And I listed them in buy it now or best offers like a few weeks ago. And I just wanted to see if I could get anybody to bite on those. And I got quite a few watchers, but no real offer, like no offers at all. And so I ripped them down and listed them in auctions to end really through the weekend, where I'm hoping to get some bids. Some of them have some bids. Some of them don't. And I'm hoping that they pick up some bids throughout the next 24 to 48 hours. I would say it would be, it's 12:23 Central Time as I'm talking. So it's really going to be more like the next 36 hours that I think I'm going to see some action. So Thursday night, Friday, Saturday, as people read and see Caleb Williams, Drake May prognostications with their new teams. You call it the residual. I think that's exactly right. I think there's going to be residual hype throughout this weekend in particular, where I'm excited to be ending those auctions through the weekend and not necessarily on the draft night. But those are for specific cards. We have Gabe Davis in the live chat with a lot of great insights as well. And this is where it's perfect because, like I said earlier, it depends on your situation. It depends on the card. It depends on what you got in at. Gabe Davis says, I got 2 ending on draft day. I'm already in the green on both Caleb auctions, so I can't complain. I got in real cheap, though. He's ending both around Thursday around 9 p.m. So I think ending around 9 p.m. is much different than ending on draft day. Because when you're ending around 9 p.m., you've had Roger Goodell come to the podium a couple of times, and you've had that hype. And that hype, that moment, is going to be much different than, say, 6 p.m. tomorrow. Gabe Davis also has 2 Penix up, had a few cards left over, so threw them all up for auction. I think that's super smart. Gabe Davis also says start your auction at 99 cents. I think that can be a strategy when it applies to a particular situation where that would be to your advantage. I think starting auctions at 99 cents can be to your disadvantage in other situations. For example, 99-cent auctions make sense when you're not into a card very much, when it's a super desirable card, when it's the right time, when you know you're going to have a lot of eyeballs on that auction when it's ending. That has to be a perfect storm. I think lowering a bid is a safer move than starting an auction at 99 cents. So starting an auction at $99 or $199, getting some watchers, and then lowering the bid down almost in like a Dutch auction, or it would be like a Dutch auction type of a situation to get that first opening bid and get all of the people watching that item to get that notification that bid amount has been low. The opening bid has been lowered. Now you've enticed more people into that auction. So I think for a higher dollar card, I would rather see somebody start with a high opening bid, but monitor it and then lower the opening bid as they acquire more watchers, but don't get that first opening bid. Once you get that first opening bid, you're in business. One other thing, Connor, I'm going to say, and I know you're throwing up some great insights from people like Shane Graham in the live chat right now, so I'll let you kind of bring them in a second, is I think what people don't do enough of, and I would love to know from the audience their take on this. I don't think enough people take their eBay link of their auction and share it. I don't think they do that enough on social media. I don't think people build up enough of a social media following to consider when and how to share their eBay links. I think sometimes people are embarrassed to share their eBay links. I know sometimes people are in Facebook groups that don't allow you to share eBay links. They frown upon that. I think sometimes people are in Discords that don't allow you to share your eBay links. I know beyond a shadow of a doubt, I haven't been on Reddit since 2021 because people were absolute a-holes to me on Reddit, even when you were allowed to share your eBay links on Reddit, even when the rules encouraged you to share your eBay links on Reddit. I got backlash for doing that quite a bit. So I think people building up your social media following, building up your network of people who you sell cards to, and then sharing your eBay link with those people, and either just telling them, if you're interested in this card, I'd love it if you bid, or not shill bid, but if you're actually interested in this card, I would love for you to bid, and posting that on social media, things like that. I don't think enough people do that. I think people are scared for a lot of reasons. And I think a lot of people just rely on the eBay algorithm to put them at the top and to get them those watches and those bids. But I think it's a bit more of a grind than that, even on eBay. I would love to know what the audience thinks of all of this as well.
Yeah, good breakdown. Real quick, I just want to give a shout out to our guy Shane Graham, who is in the house right now. So I started all my auctions at 99 cents, has them ending between 8 and 10 p.m. on Thursday. So kind of similar to, I believe, Gabe Davis, who is ending theirs at 9 p.m. on the Thursday. Also got Spirited Whiskey in the live chat with some strong thoughts on eBay and using that for flipping cards.
Appreciate you, Spirited Whiskey. Appreciate you, man. Keep it coming. We love it.
Definitely. We also got Ziggy No in the house. Ziggy, thanks for being here. Says great insights on selling. Says I don't sell much directly on eBay because I use a consigner. I focus on increasing my quality and margins, which is interesting. Paul, real quick, what are your thoughts on using consignment to try to, I guess, scale your business?
Yeah, I mean, Ziggy knows what he's doing. So shout out to Ziggy. Like, I think Ziggy has his own formula and strategy for how he probably uses those consigners. So my guess is that he's doing something that I'm super interested in learning more about, to be honest with you. I'm kind of trying to do our own version of it, Connor, right? With the formula, where it's kind of like, it's like looking at a specific focus area, going all in on the focus area based on the data, and then just being like, okay, I'm going to go bulk. Like, I'm going to go bulk into this, knowing that they all have good margins. And then from there, I'm just not going to really worry about spending too much time on the selling marker or how the card's listed and all that. And I think there's a lot of people in the hobby that create content. And there's a lot of people in the hobby that don't create content that are so their volume is so massive that they kind of have to do this, and they have to use consigners in this way. And my guess is that there's some kind of trickle down effect. Either breakers or repackers or people that participate in breaks, card shops. I think there's a lot of personas in the hobby that this applies to. And so I'm not going to make a blanket statement and say don't use consigners, because I think Ziggy knows what he's doing and I'd like to learn more about it. For me personally, I haven't gotten to the volume level where a consigner would make sense for me. I've preferred to build up my own individual eBay profile to the point where I'm a top rated seller. I've got 100% feedback. So in a way I could be as legitimate as one of the top consigners when it comes to being an eBay seller, providing that top-notch experience. And so I've just taken a different route of getting there, which requires more of a grind. It requires more of paying attention to every little detail of my inventory and how I'm selling it. And not to take anything away from Ziggy's grind or people like Ziggy. That's a grind too. But I think more of the grind, my guess is that more of their grind is on the front end than on the back end. They're grinding on the front end, and then they're able to just kind of set it and forget it on the back end and send it to a consigner, knowing that they bought in with margin. We've done a lot of not necessarily buying in with margin, buying in with a selling marker, and then needing to be dependent on that selling marker to profit. So I think it's just different strategies, but both very valid.
Definitely different strokes for different folks. Love that breakdown there, Paul. Is there anything else you wanted to add to our draft night debate before we move along today?
No, I just appreciate the additional insights from the live chat here. I mean, Ziggy always brings it strong. Love to see new names in here, Spirited Whiskey and Gabe Davis. Watch out, ladies. Gabe Davis is only on social media for the cute dog pics and the ladies. So just be careful, everyone out there. Don't get catfished by Gabe Davis.
I love it. Guys, like Paul mentioned at the top of the show, we are in the dead center of the first round of the NBA playoffs right now. Last Wednesday, we did sit down with you guys and kind of do a play-in/playoff preview of potential selling strategies for guys that we have discussed buying over the last few months. But now that round one is officially in gear, let's look at what has happened so far, kind of whose prices are moving and what you should be doing with your cards. Obviously, we want to keep you guys as up to date as possible. Stay liquid like water, people. So let's hop right on into things, Paul. We're going to kick things off with our guy, Anthony Edwards. The Timberwolves have now gone up 2-0 over the Phoenix Suns. His Prism Silver is up 6% over the last 30 days, so not a huge jump. But, Paul, this is not including a $750 sale from one of our one-on-one strategist members. I won't disclose their name just in case they want to stay anonymous there. But so we know that 6% is actually a little bit different and now is going to be a new comp for people. I know a lot of people and a lot of our one-on-one members, Paul, have gotten in around the $550, $600 range. I know you got in much cheaper based on how you got a PSA 10 for this Anthony Edwards Prism Silver. But it's in an interesting spot right now because I think a lot of people can move it to make profits. I think with the Timberwolves now up 2-0, there are a couple of different ways you can navigate this situation. So I'm going to give my thoughts, then we'll get your feedback here. So first option, Paul, if you need cash flow back quickly, I think I'd start a 7-day auction starting tomorrow night. This will minimum give you 2 games of hype and attention and have the auction ending on what would be the night of Game 6. If you don't need cash flow back, this is option number 2. Then you can leave Ant-Man in a high buy it now or best offer and see if you can get some residual hype or some bites at this one. I think if the Timberwolves make it to round 2, demand and prices for Ant-Man will definitely continue to trend up. So there's kind of 2 different ways you can approach the situation based on how quickly you need cash back. But if you're holding Ant-Man right now, you got to feel like you're in a pretty good spot, even with him not playing fantastic last night. The fact that the Wolves are up 2-0 and that the series, I believe now it goes back to Phoenix. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Phoenix grab a couple, but I like ending the auction at what would be Game 6, just because you'll get those residuals of the next few days of hype, the next few games of hype, and things could get pretty intense there. So curious what you think people should be doing with Ant-Man, if you kind of agree with these strategies, and any additional thoughts you have for the audience.
Yeah, I've got an auction going right now. Mine ends, I think, in 8 days, 7 or 8 days. So without looking at the calendar, I don't know how close that would be to a Game 6. But what I did was just kind of, I wanted to get it through the series. And Ant-Man's been playing well. Like you said, Wolves are up 2-0. This card's up. It's up in general over the last 60 to 90 days, and it's even up over the last 30 to your point. So I think that your strategy's right on here. I mean, I'm over $300 already on 11 bids with 6 or 7 days left. I'm hoping that this $750 sale that you mentioned now becomes a comp that mine will get to. I'm less than $200 into this card. Why? Because I found an HGA 9.5, believe it or not, and cracked it out and got a PSA 10, which is huge. So I'm only like $180 into this card all in. So it's already a win for me. But, certainly I've waited more than a year. I've waited like 18 months to have this card listed at this point. So I'm really hoping that, that everybody else out there is considering, listing Ant-Man cards for sale right now, because not only is this Prism Silver up, but, the base is up, and I think, he's looking like it's going to be his time to win a series and be the star of the series. Man, the Wolves look good. So I think you're right, though. I think Phoenix is going to come back, get at least one at home, maybe two at home, make it super interesting. And but you know what, Connor? I'm horrible at predicting the outcome of NBA games and NBA series. So that's why I got my card listed. I'm getting my cash. I'm getting out, baby. So would love to have the nooffseason.com fam in a similar boat with me on the Ant-Man play. And it's something we've talked about for a while. So let's get that cash, people. I love it.
Totally. Reduce your risk, get your profits, and look to move in another direction. Speaking of another direction, let's head over to Philadelphia and look at Tyrese Maxey. We talked about him last Wednesday. The 76ers are down 2-0 already, Paul. However, both losses have been on the road. It was also just announced that Tyrese Maxey has won 2024's Most Improved Player Award. And Paul, while I don't really think this award independently will cause huge changes to Maxey's market, it is a nice little push in pairing with the playoff hype, as well as the fact that Maxey is playing well. I think he just dropped 30 last game. I think, Paul, I'm probably following a similar strategy here with Anthony Edwards. I think for a lot of people that invested with Maxey, we haven't really seen the spikes that we expected since the investment point. So a lot of people are probably, break even right now, maybe a little bit down. So I think, especially with the 76ers down 2-0, I think I'd probably leave this one in a buy it now or best offer that puts you squarely in the green, and the chance that the 76ers either do make a push or Maxey has a ridiculous game that, causes those prices to spike. But I think an auction could be slightly risky here for people that aren't necessarily in the green yet, because the 76ers ultimately could get eliminated from playoff contention pretty quickly, and it might be tough to kind of get that auction up into the green there. But thoughts on Tyrese Maxey?
Yeah, I love Tyrese Maxey as a player. I think the hobby does as well, and there's no reason not to. You mentioned the Most Improved Award. I mean, well-deserved. I see other awards for this guy in the future. I see like perennial all-star appearances for Tyrese Maxey. I see him being like all NBA, at least second team quite a bit in his career. So I think he's a stud. I mean, I'm all in on him as a player. I think the tricky thing about Maxey is how do you make money on him? I've broken even on him kind of as a whole on all of my Maxey plays combined, and I've made a lot of Maxey plays. But the reason I've broken even on him is because he's never super cheap. And my fear is that when he does become cheap, it could be because of a hype crash. And as much as he's loved in the hobby, and rightfully so, there's more and more players and there's more and more cards that come out every year, and there's competition because of that. So, there's more supply. And then where does the demand go? Is the demand going to continue to go back to a guy like Tyrese Maxey? That's a tough one for me. So I'm even on Maxey, career even on Tyrese Maxey, thinking that selling markers are going to bump his pricing up, thinking that maybe the Sixers are going to do more than they actually do. I think Maxey falls into a category that just about every other basketball player falls into. And that is he going to get to the NBA Finals? Is he going to get to the NBA Finals, and is he going to be the star of the conference finals to the point where that drives up his card prices? And I mean, there's 30 NBA teams, so it's really, really hard to get there. So I think that to make money on Tyrese Maxey, it's going to be a grind. It's definitely not going to be set it and forget it. It's going to be doing things like looking at our formula to see where the opportunities are to buy either a raw card and get it graded, or to buy a PSA 10 and flip it. And the formula-based rankings at nooffseason.com are there for that reason. So I love Maxey, but my fear is that you've got so many other things happening that take the hype away from him, and then the hype crashes in general. And now you've got to be in a situation where he does something spectacular on the court, probably not just an all-star appearance, probably not just a postseason award. It's got to be getting to the NBA finals and being a star along the way, potentially in the conference finals, to really drive up his market. And so that's why I think he's a little bit of a risk moving forward. Now, in terms of selling him now, it's going to be on a card by card basis. It's going to be on a, how much are you into it? But I do think, Connor, in general, even though the Sixers are down, they're still playing, and there's still a lot of hope, and there's still a lot of media coverage. So if you're able to move out of a Maxey card right now for a profit, even for a slight profit, I think it's probably a good idea. Otherwise, you're holding it all the way through the offseason and into next season. And again, I don't know that there's Tyrese Maxey hype in October of 2024. I just don't know. I just don't think so.
Yeah, and I think I have a hypothesis, Paul, because overall, I've been really pleased with how kind of these NBA plays that we've tried to time the market, how they've panned out. We've sent out sell alerts now for Jalen Brunson. We've sent them out for Zion Williamson. We're seeing profit spikes for Anthony Edwards, right? So I've been pretty happy. And my hypothesis really for Tyrese Maxey is the reason that I don't think he's jumped. One, obviously, is that the 76ers fell off a little bit towards the end of the season. Joel Embiid was injured for a while. They started losing some more games. They fell a couple of spots in the seeding. But I think the big thing here, Paul, that we might need to kind of add as a guideline is that for trying to time the market for these NBA players, all the other names that we mentioned are the best player on their team. And I think that Maxey not being the best player on his team, especially with how difficult it is in the first place to make money on basketball cards, kind of makes it difficult to predict his movements and hope that he's going to get the same spikes that a guy like Anthony Edwards, a guy like Zion Williamson, a guy that Jalen Brunson would. So I think that's interesting. I think there's more research to look at in terms of, high-end, top-tier second players and how they have reacted to timing spikes like some of our top-end guys have. So that's something I definitely want to look into, but ultimately really good analysis on you there from Tyrese Maxey. And yeah, I think especially if you're in the green, I think you got to get out because like you said, you're going to be holding on to this asset for a while if you don't get out now and you're in the green. But moving along, we'll go ahead and look at LeBron James, Paul. This is someone we pitched as a buy several months ago, Paul. And the reason that we did it is because there's a lot of different sell markers that could present themselves. So obviously we want to talk LeBron James now that we are in the playoffs, which was one potential sell marker, depending on how the Lakers fared. Unfortunately, they are pitted up against arguably the front runner of the playoffs. So LeBron's market has been pretty stagnant as of late. It is down 1.7% over the last 30 days. And the Los Angeles Lakers are now down 2-0 after blowing a 20-point lead to the Denver Nuggets, who, as I mentioned, I believe most would deem the team to beat in the playoffs. So my thoughts on LeBron are, unless you are strapped for cash, Bron prints are likely, a hold right now. He has just 3 rookie cards in PSA 10 that are up 30% or more, and each is relatively low end. 2 of those cards are $100 or less, and 1 is a $300 card. If you are strapped for cash, I think LeBron will sell. I think he's always going to sell year round. There's been over 5,000 secondary market transactions for LeBron in the last 30 days, meaning that unless you have an extremely rare or high-end card, you could list LeBron in an auction, likely a 5-day auction that ends Monday, which would be game 5. Paul, otherwise I think I'm waiting for Bronny James news because last week I talked about how I don't necessarily like to hold secondary players hoping that the primary players' news spike is going to help them kind of rise in value. But I would argue that LeBron is almost the primary player in a scenario where Bronny's news leaks. So I think we're holding Bron for more prevalent sell markers unless you really need to get some cash back. What do you think on LeBron James?
Yeah, I think LeBron James market is going to always be solid. It's obviously going to depend to make money. It's obviously going to depend on the card and the deal that you can get it for. I think you're playing the same margin game, even with a guy like LeBron, that you're playing really everywhere else in the hobby right now to try to make money flipping. Because he is LeBron, he will always sell. So that's the advantage to trying to make money flipping LeBron cards, is that he's a great player to target. And if you can squeeze margins on both ends, you can definitely make money. And I agree that like he's playing well enough on his own merit to potentially even have like some performance spikes at age 39, which is impressive. He's got Bronny coming into the league. He's probably going to continue to play for a while at a high level. He's eventually obviously going to retire. So all of these things being in the media, I mean, when he retires, just be prepared for like the longest amount of media coverage for a retirement. If we thought that what was the thing called when he went to Miami? Like the announcement or the
decision, right?
The decision. Thank you, Connor. If we thought the decision was blown out of proportion, just get ready for the retirement, because the retirement's going to be ridiculous. So for all of those reasons, I mean, LeBron James is always going to be a nice buy if you can kind of squeeze out some margins on the buying end. And you probably can if you're an astute buyer. In terms of like regularly flipping LeBron at selling markers, the real selling marker for him is going to be how far does he go in the playoffs? Like, what does he do to cement his legacy as a player? However, you mentioned Bronny, and it's interesting because Ziggy in the chat is talking about Bronny really as kind of one of the only things that's interesting about this year's draft class. So when you combine those two things together, I do think that LeBron is a player that could get some collateral media love that could drive his card market. I'm holding Bronny, and Bronny's moved up our formula-based sports card rankings even. So not just on my own opinion of what's going to happen with Bronny, but our formula-based sports card rankings at nooffseason.com now show Bronny buy, raw, and grade at the top. Still time to do that. So I'm not sure what's going to happen, but I will say this. If Bronny gets drafted, there's definitely going to be a big spike in Bronny and probably a pretty decent spike in LeBron cards. So I think we agree on that. And I agree with Ziggy. I think this year's NBA draft class looks like a wet fart on paper, other than if Bronny gets drafted. And that actually improves Bronny's chances of getting drafted, because it is a wet fart on paper. Now I want to say this before we move on to your next players. And I want to flag plant real quick, because Ziggy mentioned something that I was literally, I've been thinking about it for a long time, and I was literally thinking about it this morning. Victor Wembanyama's second year. Flag plant is this. If you think he was impressive this year, get ready for year two. Just get ready for year two. Not only has Wemby's base prism and his silver prism somewhat dominated our formula-based sports card rankings, I think I am the most confident in performance spikes from Victor Wembanyama. I don't think he needs to do much to spike on the court to spike his card prices. I don't think there's any worry of hype crash with this guy. I actually think the Spurs are going to be really good next year. Just wait until he's on a good Spurs team. And I think it could be as early as year two. I think that we haven't even begun to scratch the surface. Even though Victor Wembanyama cards, if you look at the basketball card market update at youtube.com/Paul Hickey and Sports Card Strategy feed that I put out every Wednesday, he's dominated the basketball card market update from a sales volume standpoint. We haven't even scratched the surface. We're out of the period of uncertainty, Connor. We talked about the period of uncertainty with Victor Wembanyama back in January when his Prism wasn't out yet. Now Prism's been out for long enough to let the market settle. Get in. Go to the nooffseason.com, formula-based rankings, see where we've got Wemby, what cards we've got there. Get into Wemby. Wemby is the guy. So I know we're going to keep talking about these other basketball players because it's super interesting, and there are other opportunities. But if you want to be laser focused making money flipping sports cards right now, I've got a lot of syllables for you. Victor Wembanyama. What is that? 6? There you go.
I love it. Yeah, if you think the hype right now for Wembanyama is too high to get in, the hype next year is going to be different. Right now, getting in on Wemby right now is technically going where they ain't for what his market is. And this is a guy that absolutely, if you compare his rookie year to Kevin Durant, he killed it. It's not even remotely close. He actually led the league in step-back three-pointer percentage this year, Paul. I don't know if you knew that. He shot 45% on step-back threes this year as a 7'3" center that plays 1 through 5, basically. So totally agree with you. I think, especially as we can see, it feels like, and we talk about the media a lot, we talk about hype, Paul, and I'm excited for basketball because it feels like the media and the NBA is doing a good job of slowly pushing the narrative of the next guys up, right? We saw the commercial. I don't know if you saw the commercial that came out that was unbelievable. It's like all the old goats of teams, and they've edited in all the new young players into the commercial. If you haven't seen it, I have to send it to you. If you have seen it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's an incredible ad. So even the NBA is starting to push it. So as we start to see these new younger guys kind of take the reins, the torch being passed, we saw Anthony Edwards kind of chirping at Kevin Durant. Like, we're seeing a lot of this stuff slowly happening. So I'm excited because that hype is going to shift to these younger guys and away from kind of the guys that we will be retiring over the next couple of years. So I'm glad you pointed that out. Wemby is going to be a great buy. Let's keep rolling. I mentioned that the Lakers are down 0-2. So probably we got to talk about the guys that are up 2-0, and that's Jokic and Jamal Murray of the Denver Nuggets. Both of their markets have seen slight jumps over the last 30 days, with Jokic going up 3% and Jamal Murray up 1.7%. Paul, I think the Nuggets are going to absolutely tear through the West. However, I still want low-risk options. So here's my low risk. You can run auctions during the second round of the playoffs that end near Game 5 or Game 6. Or if you want to take on some more risk, you can hold these cards and list as a buy it now or best offer now at a price that puts you well into the green. Hold them until the playoff conference finals or the NBA finals and run an auction. I would avoid doing much this current round because expectations are already set that they will advance. And really, they're already set that they'll make a deep push, Paul. So, they're going to have to really do something to kind of break the narrative that's already out in terms of hype and excitement. So I don't think prices are likely to spike until they get kind of to that point there. Obviously, there's not a ton of Jamal Murray rookie cards, but I was doing research on the difference between Jamal Murray in the regular season and postseason. And he's quite literally a completely different player. He's averaging about 17 points a game for his career. You take it to the postseason, which is 55 games. He's averaging almost 25 a game. So a completely different player in the playoffs. So if you're holding Jamal Murray right now and you're confident in kind of a Nuggets push, depending on how much risk you're willing to make yourself available to, Jamal Murray could see some serious spikes because he seems to just be a different animal in the playoffs. But how would you sell your Jokic and Jamal Murray cards if you're holding them?
I'd wait till they get to the NBA Finals, and I think that could be threading the needle. I don't even know if they will get to the NBA Finals. I think you have to hope that they're going to get to the NBA Finals, because when they're in the finals, there's only 2 teams left. There's not that much sports going on. That is the focus in early June. Really people are, a little bit worn off of the hype of the start of the baseball season. NFL training camp hasn't really taken shape yet. The focus really, really, really is on the NBA Finals in June. And I think that's where, if they're in it, then you start to see, Jokic GOAT, propaganda and whatnot. And so, I think that's what you need to hope for. If you're looking to sell those guys during this year's NBA playoffs. So AKA if you bought in with that as your selling marker, which means you probably bought in pretty high, because, they won last year. So I can't imagine that at least Joker has gotten cheap enough to profit just simply on the playoffs being here, because they won it last year. And so I think that's what you're hoping for. I also, Joker doesn't have as big of a market as some of these other big names, even though he's clearly, one of the top players in the league as the MVP. He doesn't have as big of a market. And you could argue, well, as a second round draft pick, he also doesn't have as many cards. And so supply and demand could be in his favor and all that stuff. Yeah. But he's not as hot as some of these other guys. Murray, I think you make a great point about him, but he's also second fiddle to Joker. His cards are older, and he has been injured a lot. So you have this, even though he is Mr. Playoffs, I wonder if some of that is because he's missed so much of the regular season. So I almost think if you bought in on Jamal Murray, you've had to climb this mountain, and the mountain that you need to summit is the NBA Finals and something big in the NBA Finals in order to profit on it. So I think either way, you need that for both of these guys. So yeah, I think, I hope that people will be making money on these guys, but I don't know. I mean, like I said, I'm horrible at predicting what's going to happen in the NBA playoffs. I think that, they've still got to get through either Minnesota or Phoenix. They've still got to get through LA Clippers or Dallas, and they've still got to get through OKC. So I don't know that it's a foregone conclusion, as good as Denver is, that they'll make it to the NBA Finals, which then leads me to say that I think you're holding those guys, because then I think that a team like Denver is a team, I believe, could have an early exit this year, but then come back and win another championship in a future season. Do I want to be the person who's holding those cards that long? Absolutely not. But maybe some other people want to be that person.
Yeah, good thoughts there. I think there's a couple more players that I want to mention, Paul, and they all play for the Villanova Knicks right now. Two of them obviously are lower market level guys. That would be Dante DiVincenzo, as well as Josh Hart. Dante's market is up 12.5% over the last 30 days. That's across 202 secondary market transactions. And then you've got Josh Hart, whose entire market is up just a hair under 13% over the last 30 days, but that is just across 41 sales. For these two guys, Paul, I think even with the Knicks up 2-0, with them being secondary and third and not even like third, fourth options, whatever it may be, especially when Julius Randle's healthy, I think that you got to move out of these guys right now, just seeing that spike, especially if your card is in the green, just because we don't know how long this Knicks team is going to stay together. You don't want to sit and wait for them to make a finals appearance. You don't want to bet on them to win playoff series. And like I mentioned, because they're not the guy on the team and potentially the third, fourth, fifth option in terms of scoring, I think seeing this healthy spike right now is a perfect time to exit out of these two guys. In terms of the top guy for them, obviously that's Jalen Brunson. We did send out a sell alert. I believe it was April the 14th because the Knicks had locked in the second seed. So we sent out a sell alert for him because prices had started to spike. He's continued to move up. So his entire market's up 19% over the last 30 days across 583 sales. As I mentioned, we did send out that sell alert. And if you got out then, I think it was the right time to get out, obviously, because we just didn't want to bet on them winning a playoff series. They're kind of unestablished, unproven team. However, if you did not sell yet, these are the cards that you should sell now. His Prism Silver Raw is up 134%. His Prism Hyper and PSA 10 is up 114%. His Prism Blue Ice out of 99 and PSA 9 is up 112%. And his Prism Red, White, and Blue and PSA 9 is up 110%. Guys, those are numbers that you want to exit on, even with them up 2-0. In my opinion, I'm moving each of these as buy it now as that put me squarely in the green with them up 2-0, and then potentially can look to move to an auction depending on different scenarios that play out. But in terms of his Prism Silver, Paul, I think if you're holding it right now, it could potentially actually be a hold. I'm kind of in the middle on what to do with this one. It's up 8% over the last 30 days. Obviously, we did send out a sell alert for specific cards, but I'm kind of stuck on the Prism Silver. I think you could be holding until round 2 with them up 2-0 because you haven't seen the spikes that you want. I think Brunson's going to have a long runway in the league that potentially gives you different sell markers. However, that would mean holding this card and not getting that cash flow back for an extended period of time if you wait for next season. A lot of different things you can do with this Prism Silver and PSA 10, Paul. What do you think you should be doing here?
I think it was brilliant that we sent out the sell alert for him, even though his cards have gone up since, because we qualify all of that within the article at nooffseason.com that you should be up right now for these reasons if you bought him at these points. So, and I like that he's continued to go up because at sell alerts, in theory, we want to try to leave meat on the bone for people. I think that's why flipping sports cards works, is because we're not trying to be the top comp and screw people over. We're trying to help everybody win in the hobby. And so selling at a time where there's still meat on the bone for other people, I think is always ideal because you're mitigating your own risk, you're profiting, but you're also allowing somebody else to either get the card they really want and or profit themselves. So I think I love that we sent out the sell alert. To your point, I think that from what I've seen, I would sell. I would sell all of these guys because, you know, let's just work backwards. Brunson is the only potential hold, but my argument would be when's the next time there's going to be this much hype around Jalen Brunson and the Knicks? Like, is there going to be another time? I don't know for sure. And I think if you think you know for sure, then I would question, you know, a little bit of your sanity on that, because I don't, it could happen. I mean, they could be a team that continues to build these types of playoff appearances, which would be super, super interesting. But I think now is the perfect time to hold only until round 2. And I think that's what you're saying. Like, do you sell now or do you hold until round 2? I think that answer comes, how much are you into the card? Look at the current market pricing. If there are a significant amount of comps that are, you know, 30 to 40% above where you bought in at, I would definitely sell that card. If you need to go up like another 10 to 20% to actually profit, I would list in round 2, because I think then if you don't list, then I think you're risking a loss. And I think you're risking holding the bag for longer than you actually think you're going to be holding the bag for, even on a guy like Jalen Brunson. Basketball's just tricky, man. Basketball's super tricky. I think you got to get out soon. Josh Hart and Dante DiVincenzo. I mean, I hope that the only reason why you would have had those guys cards is like because you won them in a break or ripped them out of wax and they've been laying around. Maybe you got them in a value box. Sell them now. It's kind of funny, like, side note, that Philly is feeding New York in terms of their talent right now, from Villanova to Madison Square Garden. But that's just another little side note. Yeah, I like it. I think this is a good discussion. Great NBA playoffs thoughts. And, you know, general theme, though, I think is you got to be very, very careful. I think you got to be very, very smart to try to get out, even if you're breaking even and getting out and being able to reinvest in other things. The play with using the NBA playoffs as a selling marker is to get fortunate with a performance spike. And if you're not fortunate with the performance spike, I think your risk mitigation was buying the right card for the right player so that you could get out without a performance spike for around the same price that you got in at, worst case scenario, to stay in the game and reinvest in other things. If you're fortunate and you're holding like an Ant-Man like I am, I'm a little bit more fortunate. I've been less fortunate in the past. So now is my time to get a little bit fortunate, get a little bit lucky, get some of that money back from a profit standpoint and reinvest it into more stable things. I know we're about to segue into something that definitely is not stable, but it's going to be very, very exciting for the audience. So those are my thoughts on the NBA playoffs. I think we've got a lot in the live chat that I want to star just to kind of comment on at the end of the show. So stay tuned for all of that. But I'm excited to kind of segue into top 5 sports card opportunities to buy a card pre-graded and flip. Connor, what's today's theme?
Yeah, we're going to talk about backup QBs today. Paul, you have mentioned prior doing a play that involves picking up prints of each of the backup quarterbacks in the NFL, kind of due to last year's high injury percentage and the price spikes that we did see when backup quarterbacks kind of got the nod. So I thought it made sense, especially with it being still on a point to buy football cards. I thought today would be a good time to look at the top options to invest if you wanted to merely sprinkle some cash in the backup QB realm rather than invest in every single one of them. It would be kind of eager to expect prices, especially for former starters that are backup quarterbacks now, to return to the price that they were prior. So instead of using like exact historical data of where they were last year or the year before, kind of try to use conservative numbers when it comes to using historical data. But with a contingency here is that we're not saying necessarily that these prices will hit this mark again. What we did try to do, like I mentioned, is look at where the prices were, take a percentage of that, which we will share what percentages we did take. And then if they do get the nod and they play well, there is always the chance that they go higher. There's a chance that they're lower, but we're going to give you numbers that give you information as to where they could potentially get. So stay tuned. We're going to hop in first with Trey Lance. We're looking at his 2021 Mosaic Pink Camo in PSA 10. That's a pop count of 393. So let's kind of hop into why we looked at him and what kind of numbers we used to get the feedback from the formula, right? So we're using the formula, obviously, for everything today to kind of get data-driven results. Obviously, Dak Prescott has been a top quarterback in NFL for a few years now, but it seems like he and the Cowboys have always struggled to get to the next level and really win anything of value, which is why I like picking up Trey Lance here. And Paul, really, he'd be higher on this list if Cooper Rush wasn't on the depth chart in the quarterback room alongside him. But if you look at his 2021 Mosaic Pink Camo, which does happen to be a pretty liquid card, you can pick it up now for just $15. The number that I used, instead of looking at what Trey Lance prices sold at while he was getting time when it was with the 49ers, I actually looked at his 365-day average of this card, which I felt like was very conservative because Trey Lance didn't take a snap in 2023. Yet the 365-day average was still $33. So I believe that we can assume this is a conservative number to throw into the formula that would only go up in the news that Lance gets playing time. Based on these numbers, Paul, you would need to spend $657 on 43 of these cards, which obviously would be pretty difficult with a pop count of 393, but I guess potentially doable. So you need to spend $657 to turn a $500 profit, which is a return on investment of 76%. Paul, the main talk today is going to be what kind of number we think these cards can get to and how reliable or possible it is. So I use that $33, which I feel like is actually a conservative number here. What are your thoughts on this card? How do you feel about that $33 price point? And then are you investing in Trey Lance?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. So I want to just try to quickly do that to give everybody added context because Connor just did a great job breaking everything down. Basically, the bullet points are, we know this is super risky to buy backup quarterbacks because obviously the starter has to suffer an injury and then that person that you bought has to be named the starter. Or the starter just has to play poorly enough. But I think a injury is actually more likely than a lot of these starters just being benched. But we'll unpack that a little bit player by player. The other side to this is that, while that first statement shows risk, the second side to this is that every year this does happen around the National Football League. So why should this upcoming year be any different? Which is why we want to get your guys' brains thinking in this direction about the backup QB strategy and how this could potentially work. Running it through the formula is another thing that Connor mentioned that mitigates risk. So even though these things need to happen in real life to actually have these profits come to fruition, the fact of the matter is we've built in a lot of modifiers into the formula to mitigate the risk. And there's really low downside to a lot of these plays, which really brings up the conversation of how fun is this? I mean, this is really fun. Like if you're a fantasy football player, if you're looking for like those deep cuts or those penny stocks, I think this is actually probably the least risky strategy to find like a penny stock. Not much actually has to happen compared to, say, a penny stock baseball prospect coming to fruition, or the backup point guard of an NBA team becoming a superstar. Like those are the things that need to happen in the other two major sports, where all that really needs to happen in the NFL is for a starting quarterback to get injured, which happens every year. And you just have to be prepared for it with the right card for the right backup at the right time. So now's the perfect time to talk about that because, other than one of these guys being in the news lately, which we'll get to in a second, most of this is actually pretty go where they ain't. So starting with Trey Lance, he's my favorite. He's my favorite backup quarterback to go into because he's got high draft capital. He's in a situation where Dallas is putting a lot of pressure on Dak Prescott. They're in the media saying they're not really sold on him. He's got contract situation coming up in the next couple of years where Dallas is going to need to see what they have in Trey Lance. So I actually think we will see Trey Lance one way or another play some snaps in Dallas this year, some meaningful snaps. It might not mean that he's the starter going into a week, but I can tell you this. If any of these guys on this list are named a starter going into a week after which they have entered the game as a backup due to the starter injury, that will be the selling marker for these guys' cards. The week they will be going into as the starter. So Trey Lance, having run his 2021 Mosaic Pink Camo PSA 10 through the formula, knowing that there's very, very low downside in terms of securing it at around $15, I actually think a card like this deserves to be at the top of the formula-based rankings. The formula think it deserves to be. And I think the caveat is, can you get this for $15 or close to? If you can, then I think absolutely the ROI of 76% is phenomenal. Can you get 43 of these for $15? Probably not. But that's just to give you an idea of how you could mix these Trey Lance cards into an overall budget of, say, $657 to turn, to keep that 76% ROI. So I love this.
Yeah, Paul, I think that's a fantastic job of kind of breaking everything down in terms of where we are and the risk that's associated with these plays, as well as the upside. Something else that I want to mention before we continue to go through these names, and I'm not necessarily saying that Trey Lance falls in this position, but there are a couple of quarterbacks, backup quarterbacks on this list that are fringe starting quarterbacks on their current roster right now. So something to consider is that we will likely see them in the preseason. So if they're potentially fighting for a spot for a starting quarterback position, but they're listed as QB2 on the depth chart right now, and their prices are reflecting that, but we know that they're going to get snaps in the preseason, that's a potential time to have a sell marker too there as well. That's not really mentioned a whole lot in our analysis today, but if you are making these plays, stay tuned for the preseason to see if those guys get snaps, because you could have free selling markers where they get snaps and they don't get another one during the regular season because they're not offered the time that the preseason does allocate for them. And one of those guys, Paul, I believe, is our number 4 slot, Zach Wilson. We're looking at his 2021 Prism Silver in PSA 10, which is a pop count of just 156. He was recently traded to the Denver Broncos, where he is currently, according to ESPN, sitting at that QB2 position to Jarrett Stidham, who has thrown, by the way, for just 1,400 yards in his entire career and has a passer rating of less than 78 or less than 80 during that time. That number is 78.3. So, Paul, for these reasons, I would not be surprised to see Zach Wilson get playtime here during the regular season. You can pick up this card, the 2021 Prism Silver in PSA 10, for just $96. In fact, Paul, that $96 is recent sales. If you look at the 60-day average for this card, it's just $70. So I decided to use the 96 to be more conservative, but based on recent comps, you maybe could get it even cheaper. Between September and December of last year, Paul, this card sold 25 times for an average cost of $157. I felt comfortable using this as a comp for a number of reasons. One, we're looking at a few months of data and a number of sales. Two, Paul, I think Zach Wilson's still young enough to where there's not a ton of fatigue in him. Like, I think that if he came out and was likely to play this season and got a couple of snaps and played a couple good games, especially in a new franchise, a new organization where people could associate that with maybe Zach Wilson wasn't necessarily the problem in New York, that this could be a good target price, especially when you consider, Paul, that this card sold for $250, $275, and $349 during October of last year. So for that reason, Paul, I used $157 as our target goal for the formula. Based on using the target pickup price of $96 and the target sales goal of $157, you need to spend just over $1,600 on 17 Zach Wilson Prism Silvers to turn a $500 profit, Paul, which would be a return on investment of 31% there. And I went a step farther, Paul. Often we do get feedback from the listeners that they cannot find the cards we're recommending for the prices that we're noting, which, Paul, I think makes sense because these are quite literally our top money-making opportunities, which kind of does make it logical that they aren't always readily available to be picked up at every corner in every market. But, Paul, there's literally a listing right now on eBay for $75 or best offer, which is $20 below the buy-in point that I just gave everyone. So this is a findable card. I think a lot of these are going to be a findable card. It's just a matter of how many you could get. I had this in the 4 spot, Paul, but as I go through all this information, I could see it potentially sliding up in this own list here. What do you think about this option?
I think you're so on fire today that I might not have even needed to show up. I think this show with just you could have been just as valuable to the audience because, for those of you that say the Sports Card Strategy Show doesn't really help you make money flipping sports cards, I would point to this example. Or for those of you that say we always talk about the same cards, I would point you to this example, and I would say what you will about Zach Wilson. He's a joke, he's a meme, whatever. He's the cougar hunter, whatever. Ha ha ha. But this is legit. This is a legit money-making opportunity. Why? Because thanks to Connor Barnett, we're looking at right now a 2021 Prism Silver PSA 10 for Zach Wilson that you literally could go buy. You can bin it right now for $75, or you could make an offer, which I would recommend, because why would you not try to make an offer? And that's $20, to Connor's point. That's $20 under the target price of the formula, that what the formula says is the snipe price. So that's $20 under the snipe price. And the average sale price that we're looking at here, we've said a lot that we don't necessarily love to project an average sale price of a card, but quite literally we have to do that in the formula for the graded only cards. Otherwise, how would we know how to rank them? And what we do is what Connor just explained. We take the average of their top sales in a previous time period. And if it's a player without those sales data, sales markers in the historical sales data, then we find a comp of the player and the season that they're going into and look at that player's sales data. And then we bring it back conservatively. We put a cap on it and bring it back conservatively, modify it even more to where it's less than what it could be, which is the 157. All Zach Wilson has to do is go into the season or go into any week of the Broncos season as the Broncos starting quarterback, not totally crap his pants. And this card has an ROI of 31%. So we've modified down. The reality is the reason why we look at the backup quarterback strategy to begin with is because the number one thing people care most about in the entire sports card hobby, based on the data, not based on my opinion, is who the 32 starting quarterbacks are in the NFL. And so as a result of that, you have a lot of prospecting, guessing, prognosticating of who will be next. And then you have a lot of people buying those players. When you can get this type of card for this price, you're likely to make money. And so it's interesting to be a first timer at nooffseason.com and go into the formula-based rankings and see guys like Zach Wilson and Trey Lance up high. But this is why we're giving you this context. And this is why you need to keep listening to us to make money flipping sports cards. You got to go where they ain't. Zach Wilson has been in the media recently, obviously, which we don't love. Normally, we don't love it in terms of when to buy a player's sports cards, but his cards are down. People are laughing at this. They're thinking that the Broncos are going to draft another QB or acquire another QB. They absolutely will. But you mean to tell me Zach Wilson won't have a slight chance to be a starter in Denver this year? Or to Connor's point, play in the preseason? Second overall draft pick, 2021, totally crapped his pants. I get it. I get why people would laugh at this. I get why people would make the cougar jokes and everything. That's fine. This is still a very legitimate money-making opportunity. So I personally love it.
Yeah, good insight there, Paul. Let's move along to our number 3 slot that comes with Sam Howell. His 2022 Prism Silver in PSA 10 is a pop count of 209. Obviously, Sam has been traded, but last year, to the Seahawks, that is, last year he had a pretty decent stretch of games. If you look kind of in November for him, and his card prices kind of saw spikes there. So in the scenario that he gets some time, we wanted to look at options for him, and I did find something that I thought was interesting. So if you look at this card, target cost right now for us is going to be $92, which is the culmination of a 60-day average across 13 sales. And that cost that we're looking at, that $92, is actually higher than the most recent sales have been going for this card. So felt like that was one area to be conservative in terms of inputting data into the formula. And then if you look at between August and October for last year, which is kind of our hype cycle period, this card averaged transacting at $261, Paul. So to be conservative here, obviously he'd have to really come in and do well. Has to come in first, and then he has to do well to get kind of close to that number. So I decided to take 75% of the 365-day average and say that that is our target goal of pricing. That way it factors in kind of the down season for him as well as the highs and the lows. So that we would get a goal of pricing to get into if Geno Smith does indeed hand off the keys at any point this season to Sam Howell. So based on using this information for the formula, Paul, you would need to spend $692 on 8 Sam Howell Prism Silver PSA 10s to turn a $500 profit, which is a return on investment of 72%. One of the reasons that I have this so high, Paul, is because you could argue that these numbers aren't necessarily the most ideal, or they could be. I mean, you could argue in either direction based on the data that we're seeing, whether it's too conservative, not conservative enough. But here's what I do like. There's a pop count of 209, and based on what I think is conservative, you only have to pick up 8 of these cards. So on our list, this is one of the most attainable plays that you could make. And I think something else that's interesting is that the Seahawks have stated that Howell is their man for the backup slot, which for me, Paul, adds kind of a small blanket of comfort in the scenario that if QB1 does go down, Howell is going to be the man to step up. He's at number 3, his Prism Silver PSA 10.
Connor, I think what I like about this entire list is that the hobby knows all of these players, and the hobby at one point or another has been all over wanting to acquire all of these 3 players. So Sam Howell happens to be the one that I think could be the best investment out of this entire list so far for a few different reasons. I think the weapons in Seattle are pretty outstanding. I think that he hasn't totally crapped his pants the way that the other 2 have. Now, I don't think Trey Lance has crapped his pants. I just don't think he's had the opportunity. Zach Wilson's clearly had the opportunity. He's clearly not that good of a football player. We don't care. Soren and Sky Ceramics, welcome to the live chat. We love you. We actually don't care how good of football players these guys are. We care about the opportunity to buy them and then sell them at a point where it doesn't matter if we're good talent evaluators or not. We're very good price evaluators, opportunity evaluators, and we're running everything through our formula. What I like about Sam Howell, though, that I haven't said yet is you mentioned QB1. QB1 is not really that much of a proven guy himself, Geno Smith. I mean, Geno Smith is not a huge name. Now, I know they gave him a contract a couple of years ago after his big season, but it's Geno Smith, guys. It's not like they don't have that much invested in Geno Smith, compared to what other teams had invested in these next 2 guys. So Geno Smith being above Sam Howell actually kind of gets my mouth watering a little bit to get some shares of Sam Howell. I think the likelihood that any of these plays in this top 5 pan out, in my opinion, Sam Howell's the most likely. Now, I'm not a betting man, so what I'm going to do probably is spread some money across these 5 guys because the formula says that we should be looking at these 5 guys. And again, low downside on all of them. So Sam Howell, it's going to be harder to get at the target cost, but to Connor's point, our target cost is based on average of recent comps. So other people have gotten it for that. So why can't we? I think Sam Howell is going to be the guy that has to do the least to move up the most potentially on this entire top 5 list. Because I don't think Geno Smith necessarily could be that hard to beat out. And I think that Sam Howell is still early enough in his career to where he could still break out. So I've never really loved Sam Howell the way that the rest of the hobby has. I think now is the time to seriously take a look at investing in Sam Howell for all of these reasons. Had the formula not validated this, we never would have even been talking about Sam Howell.
Yeah, I think, and Paul, good mention that, like, we're not trying in any capacity to be performance analysts here or say that I think any of these guys are going to be long-term starters in the league. I'm quite literally buying these guys at a point where it makes sense to get an entry because of one, low entry fees, two, the formula is backing up our data, three, we have historical data to suggest if they do get time, the prices go up, and four, we have historical data that suggests there's going to be a large portion of the league's quarterbacks that miss some amount of time this year. That's really where the root of this is coming from, right? So the next option, Paul, is likely going to ruffle some feathers. I might get some flack. However, I still feel like I took relatively conservative numbers here. So this one gives the highest ROI. However, I think a lot has to happen for this to get to the price that I mentioned. So that's why it's number 2 instead of number 1. But let's go ahead and hop into it. Mac Jones, his 2021 Select Field Level Silver and PSA 10, has a pop count poll of just 58. The target price that I chose for this is $34.50, which is actually the 60-day average for secondary market sales. Although, Paul, 4 of the last 5 sales, if you look at market movers, are below $30. So relatively conservative target price to pick this card up. Average cost between April and September, which, Paul, in theory should be relatively dead season. This is kind of when we're actually picking up football cards. So there's another layer of being conservative. But the average cost between April and September of last year, $242. Paul, I'm still not even going to use that. Let's instead look at the average all-time cost of this card. It's relatively $178. I still felt like that was too high to use. So I looked another layer, and I instead used the 365-day average of this card because I believe it factored in one, kind of the highs of the hype spike, and two, kind of the lows of how Mac Jones' season went. And that number is $157. And that is the number that I used. It's 11% lower than the card's all-time average. Paul, if Mac Jones gets playing time and this card is able to spike to just 90% of its all-time average and only half of what it sold for during the season last year, you would need to buy just 6 of these cards and invest $187 to make $500 in profit, which is a return on investment of 266%, which is the highest that we have seen so far on the formula. Obviously, there are some contingencies here, Paul. 1, he has to get the playing time. 2, he probably has to play well. And 3, the card then has to spike to a relatively high number. Obviously, we're assuming Trevor Lawrence has to go down to a big injury or some other factor that give Mac Jones a chance to start. So there is some risk here, Paul, and there might be some additional things we want to look at to kind of balance out the upside here. But based on how we have things set right now, if those prices can get to where I said, I think this is an interesting option.
Mac Jones will forever be on people's radar for a lot of different reasons. And you're right. A lot of different things will have to happen for people to actually materialize the ROI of 266%. However, I would be foolish to tell anyone who can find this card for $35 not to buy it, because people will forever be prospecting on backup quarterbacks. And even if Mac Jones is forever a backup quarterback, you should be able to sell this card for the $35 that you bought it for. And so to be holding something that you know you could probably sell for what you bought it for on the upside of a 266% ROI, that's why I love the formula. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the formula, it's really just a way to prioritize out of all the millions and millions and millions of sports cards that we could be buying from a single standpoint to try to flip and make money. It really just prioritizes it down to the top ROI, meaning lowest total buy-in for highest potential upside. We realize, to Connor's point, that things have to happen to see this upside materialize and crystallize these profits. However, again, low downside, very, very low downside to get a select field level silver PSA 10 of Mac Jones for the 60-day average. And to Connor's point, 4 of the last 5 sales are below this target price. So we've gone conservative target price. We've gone super conservative potential upside price should he start a game for the Jaguars. Now all of a sudden you're in a situation where this actually does make sense to be at the top of our already graded rankings, because for a card to be at the top of our already graded rankings, it should be extremely low downside, extremely high upside. Not that many things have to happen in real life for it to materialize. And it should be hard to find. It should be hard to find. So for those of you out there going, well, yeah, this is only pop 58. Thanks, guys, for your turd of a suggestion. I would counterpoint that with, look, our sole mission in life is to find you guys all the top opportunities to make money flipping sports cards. Shouldn't the ones at the top of our rankings be the hardest to try to get? And 4 people in the last 60 days have gotten this card for below $30. So I would counterpoint this with, for those of you kind of rolling your eyes at the Mac Jones thing, I get it. Believe me, I get it. Like Connor and I talked before the show about this, and I made these points to Connor about Mac Jones. Really, like, seems like a lot would have to happen for that to go up. Not really. Connor has done an amazing job bringing these insights to us via the formula at nooffseason.com. So I love it, and I can't wait to see who's number 1, because honestly, 5 through 2 have gotten me really excited. So who's number 1, Connor?
Slotted in the number 1 position is Justin Fields. I really like this option, Paul, because even though that Pittsburgh has quite blatantly come out and said that he is not competing for the number 1 job with Russell Wilson, based on Russell Wilson's last couple of years and the trajectory of his career, in relation to where Justin Fields sits, I think we have a high likelihood of him seeing time, and we're definitely going to see him in the preseason. But because he is technically QB2 in Pittsburgh right now, I went with conservative numbers, the same as any other player on this list that I used to input into the formula. For our target snipe price for this card, I took a 60-day average sales price across a number of sales to get $59.70. However, the last sale was just $40. So there is the likelihood that you can find this for less than $60. However, we're using that as a baseline. To turn the profit that we're looking for, you would need to reach a $129 sales point, which would be the lowest cost, Paul, that it went for between July and September of 2023. At this point, you could turn $667 invested into a $500 net profit, which is a return of investment of 35%. You would need to invest in 11 of these cards to make this happen, which, Paul, this one actually has the exact same pop count as the Mac Jones card, 58, so it could be difficult with pop count just 58. But nonetheless, I think this card provides strong upside should Wilson relinquish QB1 duties to Justin Fields for any reason throughout the season. And I think there's a lot of reasons that it could happen, Paul. Poor play, injury, moving in different directions, bad attitude, whatever it may be. We've heard a lot of different reports about Russell Wilson over the last couple of years. Justin Fields has proven to be an elite dual threat quarterback at different times throughout the last few seasons as well. And I just think he's a better quarterback in general. So the reason that Justin Fields option slotted 1 here is 1, high return on investment, 2, low capital investment up front, and 3, this is something I really feel like is going to happen throughout the year. Obviously, we don't always love trying to predict things, but I think you'd be on the same page as me. Curious to see what you think on this Justin Fields Mosaic Red in PSA 10.
I've already like verbally given the formula a blowjob, so I'm not going to do that again. What I am going to say is, what I love about Justin Fields is that Russell Wilson is there right now. And I'll explain that. So if Russell Wilson weren't there and Justin Fields were clearly on paper atop the depth chart at QB in Pittsburgh, his prices would be through the freaking roof. They really would. I mean, take Russell Wilson and the media fodder of him being the starter out of the equation, and this Justin Fields would be like the darling of the hobby. He'd be one of the top, he'd be right up there with Jordan Love, CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, all the other guys that everyone, can't wait to buy right now. Pittsburgh Steelers have one of the top fan bases by numbers. So that's data. Anecdotally, they're also one of the strongest franchises in terms of, traveling fans and interest in buying their merchandise and sports cards and legacy. They've won the most Super Bowls or tied for the most Super Bowls. And so you just got this storied franchise, and you've got a QB with high draft capital that still really hasn't shown what he can do. He's flashed, but he's got, the comparisons to Lamar Jackson and, Kenny, but he also, how much better are the Pittsburgh Steelers on the offensive side of the ball with weapons than the Chicago Bears? So you've got all these different things playing in Justin Fields' favor. Yet the one thing that we look for when going where they ain't is the lack of hype. And the only reason why you have this lack of hype is because the presence of Russell Wilson. So thank God for Russell Wilson. Thank God he's in Pittsburgh. Why? Because we can buy Justin Fields on the cheap right now. And when you validate that with the formula and you find the card to buy, that's the difference. The difference is we might like Justin Fields for all these reasons, right? But without the formula, we don't know what cards to buy, really. So we run as many Justin Fields cards as we can through the formula. We find the one that is the lowest upside or the lowest downside with the highest upside. And boom, there you go. So you've got this 2021 Mosaic Red PSA 10. It's only a pop 58. But again, to get this upside of 75% ROI, it should be hard to find. But you're going to be able to find it for much cheaper than you would be able to find it for due to the presence of Russell Wilson. I think Russell Wilson's done. I think he's a turd. I liked him earlier on in his career. I don't even know if he makes the Steelers roster this year. So I think you could have a selling marker for Justin Fields during the preseason where he's just clearly the starter because Russell Wilson can't even hold a candle to what Justin Fields is doing on the field just in the preseason. So I love Justin Fields. I'm not going out and saying buy every Justin Fields card out there because there's a lot of people that are thinking what I'm thinking. That's why the formula is important. That's why these insights for finding this right card to buy is important. So I'm totally in lockstep with you on this Justin Fields play. And I'm curious to see what people put in the comments on this YouTube video.
Definitely. Yeah, I want to, and for those that maybe just joined or that listened to the full recap and missed some stuff, or the full breakdown but missed some stuff, Paul, I'm going to do a quick recap, and then I'll toss you the reins to kind of hit on anything that we have starred to close off the show there from the audience members. But here's my takeaway from all this information, Paul. One, I believe that this data is both relevant and impactful for the decision-making process that we have when we use the formula. Mostly, Paul, because I think that these high ROIs show the power of what a legitimate sell marker can do. And we're looking at backup quarterbacks, right? We're looking at what we used to consider flyer plays. I guess they still would be in the scenario that they just get to start. So there's a couple things to remember here. One, these numbers are based on the backups getting a chance to play throughout the year. So there is risk involved because there are backups on this list that likely will not get time to play this year at all. While we're optimistic that they will, and we know they'll probably get time in the preseason, the regular season, there is no guarantee that they will play. So there's the risk. Two, while their prices will probably raise slightly without them even having to play in the regular season, just based off the NFL hype cycle, they will need real playing time to hit the target prices. But on the other end of the spectrum, Paul, and to the same token, if you look at last year's data, by December 14th of 2023, 22% of the NFL starting QBs were out for the season with injuries. This isn't just missing time. This isn't bone bruises or a week or two out. These are literally season-ending injuries that have them sidelined. That's 22% of NFL's QBs. So that's the reason that we looked at this. There's some merit to looking at backup QBs. There's some high ROI and low entry points. So I think that while these plays might not be for everyone, they're definitely something to look at, and I'm excited to see how they play out over the course of the season.
Relevant and impactful for sure. And there's a lot of relevant and impactful stuff in the live chat that I want to round out today's show with. But before I do that, I'm going to talk about one other thing that's relevant and impactful. CGC Cards. Are you ready to start grading your sports cards? CGC Cards is the perfect place to slab your favorite sports cards. From their crystal clear holders to their affordable pricing, CGC Cards is the perfect stop for your grading needs. Go to cgccards.com to start grading today. And I always want to put a little disclaimer on that read because, of course, we talk about maximizing your profits a lot on the Sports Card Strategy Show. That would be with PSA. We would want you to do that with. But CGC Cards for PC protection, phenomenal choice, phenomenal company, and I can see them actually rising in value as there is more and more secondary market data on the sales of CGC cards. So I'm going to quickly go through our live chat insights from today and just want to give a thank you to our entire audience, even if you're not in the live chat right now. But let's go through some live chat because I think that there's a lot of great stuff in here and a lot of great stuff from some new names as well as some returning names. So real quick, Ziggy No just gives us a thank you for our insights on selling and pushing them to think a little bit more of pivoting to eBay. So you're welcome, Ziggy, and thank you for the love. We appreciate you as always. Another insight from Ziggy to the audience that I wanted to to read is, thank you for this, Ziggy, because I would have forgotten this if it wasn't for you. So thank you for throwing it out there. He put it in the form of a question. Tomorrow night, I expect Topps Now draft day autos like last year. With the lack of licensed autos last year, and he's referring to CJ Stroud and Bryce Young, who have not as of yet signed for Panini and are not really expected to. I think there's a rumor out there about CJ Stroud, but I don't want to hit on that because I have no idea the validity of that rumor. But he's saying, are you buying these draft night autos? I am. You know what? I think it's definitely worth looking at. It's definitely worth looking at Topps.com and PaniniAmerica.net actually, during draft night. So tomorrow, basically, as you're watching the draft, have a little bit of extra fun going to the sites of Topps and Panini just to see what do they have for those draft night auto exclusives, because those could actually rise in value on the secondary market. They would be more of a quick flip, in my opinion. However, they would grade well. So if you have a sports card strategy that you've laid out to snag one, grade it, sell it quick, or snag one and sell it quick of one of those top NFL draftees, there's a lot of skill position players, and there's obviously some great quarterbacks. So it'll be interesting to see what opportunities there are to buy some serial numbered and some autos of those guys. Spirited Whiskey, I just want to give a quick shout out to, who's in the live chat today a few times. We appreciate you. Can anyone explain to me how Holiday is twice the price of Ellie, and who is on pace to break like every record this season? Well, the short version of the explanation, and we're happy to give you more of an explanation at nooffseason.com if you want to join a free 30-day trial of our premium membership and ask a question there at nooffseason.com/ask. We're happy to elaborate further on the sports card strategy behind this, because there definitely is one. But the short version of this is that there's been so much hype for Jackson Holiday leading up to his major league debut that he is still outselling Ellie De La Cruz when you do compare cards like their first auto in PSA 10. Their first Bowman auto in PSA 10 is really the only apples to apples comparison that we can come up with. While Holiday's does still sell for $910 and Ellie's sells for $740, the reality is that Holiday's is down 25% and Ellie's is up 14%. And the reason for that is because Ellie is far past his selling marker. His selling marker was the call up. So his prices dipped after the call up, and now they have crept back up due to his performance, which is much harder to predict. So buying Ellie now, Spirited Whiskey, I think you say that he's an excellent buy right now. I don't disagree with you, but I don't totally agree with you either, because as players perform well, their prices go up. And as that happens, they actually become riskier buys, because we don't want people buying in at the selling point. Right now, like I would have said, Spirited Whiskey, had you been with us over the last year or so, we have mentioned Ellie De La Cruz as a buy low, and now would be the selling marker potentially, because that card is up. So, but on a card by card basis, actually, Ellie's outselling Jackson Holiday quite a bit. So it definitely depends on the card. Sticking with Spirited Whiskey, will Anthony Richardson and Jordan Love remain hot heading into the National? How did everyone forget Joe Burrow is the second best QB in football so quickly? LOL. They will remain, like, those three guys will be hot at the National. There will be a lot of people that are smart that will be wanting to buy Joe Burrow before he comes back and is seen in a Bengals uniform and all that stuff. So I agree with you on the Joe Burrow comment. Anthony Richardson and Jordan Love, however, there's a lot of raw to grade opportunities for AR in particular, and there's just going to be more hype around AR and Jordan Love. So on a hype standpoint, they're going to be easier to sell and profit from. They're going to be trickier to buy, though. Joe Burrow, I think, should be a little bit easier to buy low, but more is going to have to happen. Joe Burrow has already been to a Super Bowl. He's going to have to actually have somewhat of a performance spike, unless you bought in super low, which many of you have because you've been listening to us for a while. Luke Menschel, do I think Wemby is better than Anthony Edwards? Not necessarily, but I think that there's great opportunities for both players. There's no real opportunity to buy Ant-Man right now. There's a huge opportunity to buy Wemby, and that's what I'm going to kind of end today's discussion with, without going through every single comment in the live chat related to this. The gist of what's happening in the live chat is that Wemby's pop count is growing. And typically what happens, thanks to Luke Menschel for kind of bringing this up, thanks to Spirited Whiskey, other people, Eric Sorensen, Shane Graham talking about this, thanks to all of you guys for this discussion. The general gist of the debate is, should we be buying Wemby? Because what's the selling marker? My argument is that Wemby doesn't really need a selling marker, first of all, because his base prism raw has come down enough. And although the pop count has grown and thus causing the base PSA 10 price to come down, there's still a pocket and a high enough gem rate to buy these cards, grade them, get them back, and sell them for a profit. Or you could hold for a selling marker. What that selling marker will be, I don't know, but I do believe that Wemby is good enough to lead the Spurs to a much better record next year and have many, many more performances on the court, like a potential quadruple double or close to a quadruple double, be an NBA All-Star, be a starter on the NBA All-Star team. I think there's a ridiculous amount of selling markers for Wemby coming up, but I don't think you need a selling marker for Wemby, because right now the real pocket is to go buy his Prism cards raw and grade them. And you just need to go to nooffseason.com, get a free 30-day trial, and check out the formula. That leads me to Spirited Whiskey's comment of Bedard and Wemby are sell, sell, sell. Here's my counterpoint to that. That's easy to say, but how did you get their cards? Because if you were lucky enough to get their cards in a break or buying wax, which is really the only way that you could make money. That's the only two ways you can make money on their cards right now. The Bedard Young Guns and the Wemby Prisms. The only way you can make money is if you got lucky in a break or ripping wax and you didn't even overspend in the first place. Are they sell, sell, sell in a vacuum to just try to recoup some of everything that you've spent on those breaks and on that wax? Were you super lucky, threaded the needle to actually get them, and then yes, they are sell, sell, sell. However, only in that context are they sell, sell, sell. They're both buy, buy, buy according to the formula, because the formula says based on entry-level price for the raw, gem rate, PSA 9, PSA 10, and emerging pop count, you don't even need a selling marker to make a ton of money on those cards. So just go check out the formula. So I think that about wraps it. I do want to give a quick shout out to Ryan Painter, verbally, who's in the live chat. And Soren and Sky Ceramics is another new name in the live chat that I want to make sure we shout out. Everybody, thanks so much for joining us on today's episode of the Sports Card Strategy Show. Connor, do I hit him with the outro? Mark D's in here. What's up, Mark D? Do I hit him with the outro now, brother?
Let's hit it.
Everybody have a great day. Enjoy the NFL draft. We'll see you again soon. Thanks so much for being here with us on the Sports Card Strategy Show. To connect with us further, please subscribe to the YouTube channel at youtube.com/Paul Hickey. Please also give us a follow on Instagram at Sports Card Strategy and on X at No Off Season Card. We also have a Discord that you could join at sportscardstrategy.com. Everyone, I'm Paul Hickey. For the rest of us here at nooffseason.com, have a great day. We'll see you again soon.